So just going to do a quick overview of JavaScript events here. An event really is just something that happens in the document, and just being able to catch that and then write your own code whenever that thing happens. So we're going to actually attach these events onto elements. So something like this box here, or maybe an input field. And then let's say this box is clicked, or maybe I move my cursor into it. Things like that will trigger the code. So normally when you're writing a function, you're going to do something like this. All right, so I'm just going to print out a message. And in order to call the function, you're just going to write it over here. And it's going to run that function, right? So this is going to run the function once when the script is loaded. It's going to run it. What an event listener does is it says, run this function whenever something happens. So it's a bit more dynamic that way. So let's add just an event listener onto this box. So whenever I click the box, it's going to run the function. Right, so here we have the div. It's just got an ID of my div. So I'm just going to grab that element. So I'm going to do div. Just like that. And now we have access to that element. So now we can add on the event listener. So this is the code for that. Just add event listener, and it's going to take two different things. So the first is the event, and the second is the function that you want to run. Right, so this is really all there is to it, is there's an event, so what happened in the document, and then there's the function or code that you want to run when that event happens. So I've got a list over here on W3 Schools of all the different possibilities. So you can actually just, so here's the click one, right? So we just wrote click like that. You've also got, like, let's say mouse over or something. Where's that? Key down. We'll do that one in a second. Mouse down, mouse over. Something like mouse over, right? So you could go mouse over instead, and it's going to do that. So you can just read here what that does. In this case, when the pointer is moved over an element or onto one of its children. Okay, so obviously we're not just going to write function. We're going to call some kind of function or do something. So here, actually, we're going to call the function do something. And basically what that means is whenever I mouse over this box, it's going to run this function. So let's just give that a quick try here. Right, so you can see whenever my cursor goes over that box, it's going to print out hello there again. It's not, I'm not clicking or anything, it's just whenever the cursor goes over. And if I switch that to click, right now I have to actually click in order for that to run. Now, usually you're going to want to pass in some parameters. You're not just going to do an empty function. So this is just kind of a quick way if there's no parameters. But let's say you had something like this. You're just passing through a message. The way you're going to do that is just kind of wrap this inside of an arrow function. Like that. And then here, I can actually write any code that I want, right? So I could just console.log like a message in there. I could do really any code, right? I could declare a variable, do some math, I could print out that variable, right? I could do all of this stuff, but I can also call a function. So let's say I just wanted to call the function. I could say do something like that, and then pass in that message. So even though I've written a whole bunch of stuff here, it's actually all going to happen when I click on that button, right? So all that stuff, it's happening. If I just wanted to just have the function, right, I'd go like that. So that way, whenever I click, it does this function. Now you do have to wrap it like this if there are parameters, so just something to keep in mind. Or you can do what I did before. If you don't actually have a function, or you don't want to, let's say you didn't declare a function out here, you can just write the code right in here. And whenever that button is clicked, it's going to run that code. Okay, so that's for things like divs and that. I mean, you could also add a click to this input, right? So if I went, let's just grab the input. Okay, and if I switch that over to my input and just do a quick console log, something like that. Right now, whenever I click into this input field, it's just going to do that, right? So it's just printing out that message. Now with inputs, you can actually do special events. So these, where is it here? Key press, LM, key down, there we go. So key down, key press, key up. So basically whenever someone presses a key inside of the input, whether it's pressed down, whether it's released, or whether it's being held down, these events can also be triggered. So I'm just going to write key. Let's use key up over there. So I'm just going to fill it in. Right, and we're talking about the my input, so we've switched over to that one. And I'm actually going to pass in a parameter here. So I'm just going to call it E. You can call it event or really whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it E. And then once you have that, you now have access to the information based on the key press. So let's say I type like the letter R, you're able to actually see which letter the user typed. Now the way you do that is we're just going to print it out first, just to show all the information available. So let's say I press R, we're going to get one of these objects here. So this is all the information that's stored inside of this little parameter here. Right, so we can see if the Alt key was pressed, if the Control key was pressed. We can actually get like the name of the key. So in this case, R. There's also a key code if you want to use that. And we can eventually just start checking this stuff, right? So I can say like if e.key is equal to, let's say, enter. And then the reason I know that it's going to be enter is if I go in here and I hit enter, right, I can just look through here and I say, hey, what is this set to? The key is called enter, so I'm really just passing it that there, right? So e.key is equal to enter. Okay. So I can check that, and then I can do something in here, right? So I can say console.log, pressed enter. So maybe we just go off that. And then here, this is only going to, right, I can press all these keys, it doesn't matter. But when I press the enter key, it's now going to print my message. So we're adding an event listener to that input. We're saying only when the key is released, we want to see what the key information is. And now we're just checking. So we're saying if the key is enter, do this thing. So that's pretty handy for input fields. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to actually create new elements, and we're going to give them each their own event listener. So we're going to kind of do it while they're created. So I'm going to say let new div is equal to let's create element, and let's create a div. And then I'm going to attach a, actually first let's give it some info. So something like that. And then here I can add the event lister on, just like you can access the HTML and stuff like the styling, right? So I could go like that, so I can access that. I can also just add an event listener. And let's say click, and let's give it a function. So basically, what do I want to happen when this new div is clicked? It's going to say I was clicked on first div, something like that. Okay, so now I'm just going to append that onto this box's ID here. So this little div here is going to have it. So we're going to create two divs in here. So one there, that will be created when the script goes live. So what's that called? Boxes. So I'm just going to say boxes dot, oops, I gotta get the box first. Then I'm just going to attach that new element that I created onto it. So boxes dot append new div. Okay. Actually, let's put that up here. So where new elements go, component 1, and attach. That. Right, so I created a new div here. Let's actually give that let's give it a little bit of styling. Yeah, maybe height. And maybe a border. Yeah. So that you're able to see it a little bit better. Okay, so this is the entire div here. So basically, if I click anywhere inside of here, this event listener there, this event listener here should run. Right, so we can see we get that message if I click inside of here. Now I can actually add a second div, or as many as I want really. So let's say element 2. And let's call this new div 2, maybe. Okay, so we're creating a div. We're going to set, let's change the HTML there. So this is another div. I guess it doesn't need a border color. I didn't actually specify a border style, so that's why that's not showing up. But we're going to keep everything else the same. Maybe switch this to gray, something like that. And I can actually give it a different message. So like that. Right, so now if I click on the, whoops, let's attach that first. There we go. So we got these two boxes. So if I click on the first one, I'm going to get this I was clicked, I am the first div message. But if I click on the second one, it's going to give me the I am another one. Right, so depending on the box, they each have different event listeners hooked up to them. So technically they're both on clicks, right? We both specified on click, but they're going to give different messages because we said to do different stuff when they are clicked. So you can have a whole bunch of different events for different stuff that runs different code. Right, so maybe this one I want to do like mouse over. Right, so this one I'm not actually clicking. Every time you go over that one, it's going to print that message. And here for this box, you have to actually click and it's going to do that other message. So just a lot of different stuff that you can do with event listeners. And these are just kind of the basic ways to set them up. So if you've got no parameters at all, you can just write the name of the function. So just the event and then the name of the function. If you have a function with some parameters, you're going to have to wrap it inside one of these arrow functions like that, and then just call the function in here. And if it's something like a key press, you can actually just write a parameter in here, and then you can access that parameter inside of the event listener.